to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the United Service Institution of India to 27th Colonel Pyara Memorial Lecture on Modernization of the Indian Army. The lecture will be delivered by Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Shani, PVSM, UYSM, SM, VSM. May I now request Major General BK Sharma, AVSM, SM, and BAR, Director General USI, to comment the proceeding. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of USI Council and fraternity, I extend a very warm welcome to Lieutenant General Arun Sani, who has been gracious enough to accept our invitation to deliver this very important talk on a very momentous occasion, that is Pyare Lal Memorial Lecture. Also, our gratitude to the distinguished audience here and those who are digitally linked with us through social media platforms for attending this event. As we know, Colonel Pyare Lal was an iconic personality born in Lahore in 1960. Subsequently, he was commissioned while he was studying law at Inner Temple School, which comes under the Oxford University. And while he was studying law, he got commissioned into the Worcester's Regiment in 1943, which was later on, he got transferred to then 4/5 Maratha Light Infantry. He took part in the famous Battle of Sangshek in Burma campaign, and because of his power of articulation and clarity of mind, he was PRO Burma campaign in 43-44, then during J&K and Hyderabad police section in 48, and subsequently in 62 and 1965 war. He was at the helm of USI affairs for about 30 years, initially as a secretary, and then later on he became director cum editor. And as a result, because that time the institution was going through certain financial crisis, he single-handedly, handled the institution and ushered its growth. And in the process, he became an institution by himself. He was also the General Staff Officer, Grade 1 of National Defense College for about 12 years and was helping the institution to grow during its nascent years. No wonder then there is a Pyare Lal Medal for the best thesis being awarded at the National Defense College. And here, to commemorate his contribution, we have this Pyare Lal Memorial Lecture, and even our library is named after him, Pyare Lal, a library which has about 72,000 books as of today. Coming to the topic of the day, we know that strategic security landscape of India tells us two things. That while our continental threats are on our borders, contested borders to the north, our opportunities are in the maritime space. And Indian Army remains the custodian of India's national sovereignty and integrity as far as our land borders and other asymmetric domains are concerned. And we do take pride in saying that, well, we are the third largest army in the world. We are a battle-hardened army having fought different wars since independence and also dealing with number of insurgencies, counter-terrorism, and whole lot of other kind of asymmetric threats, taking part in out-of-area contingencies, UN peacekeeping operations, and what you call is the HADR missions. We are, in fact, a catalyst of nation building as well because we represent the government's authority in the forward areas in our border areas. Having achieved a moral ascendancy over our adversary on the western borders and having brought cross-border terrorism virtually to a trickle, we have now repivoted to our northern borders to catch the Chinese bull by the horns, and we've been able to stymize some of their designs there in a record time. But concurrently, amongst all these live operational challenges, which encompass a very wide spectrum of conflicts or threats, ranging from non-contact, non-kinetic to sectoral to, full-fledged conflicts under different scenarios over a nuclear overhang and also escalation ladder. There is an ongoing transformation to cope up with the hybrid threats of the future, the multi-domain warfare, the gray zone conflicts, and that too in a VUCA environment which is characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And year 23 has been named as the year of transformation of Indian Army, in which there have been some path-breaking initiatives which have been undertaken. It implies that we are having now to we are looking at new strategies, structures, systems, and also kind of doctrines, concept, tactics, and more importantly, how do you blend the niche and disruptive technologies into your entire war fighting ecosystem? And there has been a restructuring of Indian Army headquarters. Many redundancies and overlap have been removed by redesigning and restructuring the directorates. There is the transition towards integrated capability development system. We restructure the what you call integrated battle groups in the plains, and that drive is now on as far as our mountains are concerned. We're focusing on what you call is future infantry soldier system, uh, modernization of integrated surveillance and targeting system, what we call is ISAT-S. Then there's more focus on infantry's night fighting capabilities, firepower, anti-tank capabilities, body protection, mini drone, counter drone systems, and enhancing combat effectiveness of mechanized formations in terms of rapidization, having the what you call is the future combat ready vehicles and new generation tanks, including the light tanks. There is a drive on the mediumization of artillery. In the air defense, we have this very short range air defense system, what we call is West-Rot, laser beam riding, man-portable AD systems with night fighting capabilities. In the domain of engineers, there is an induction of robotics and autonomous system for engineering tasks, besides modular construction equipment and technologies. And above all, in the arena of disruptive technologies, besides drone and counter drone, we are looking at swarm drone capabilities, AI-enabled combat platforms, UAV launched precision guide munitions, loiter ammunitions, automatic spectrum monitoring system, automation of our logistics supply chain, and also we're looking at a de novo look at our professional military education and human resource development issues. As far as A&B is concerned, there is an indigenization, fast tracking of procurement process. 87% of our contracts of the Indian military army have gone to the local manufacturers. And we've also, embraced this innovation for defense excellence, what we call is IDEX. And as part of outreach program, setting up army cells in different IITs, in other research institutions. But a particular interest that we would like to know from General Sani, since he's been dealing with defense budget in his capacity as additional director, General MO, that how are we going to cope up with this defense budget? Because there is no clarity whether we're going to get that optimum defense budget to keep pace with our modernization needs. And another very important thing is, while Indian Army's structures and systems are geared for mostly a linear kind of a thing, now we are in the mid of what you call is theaterization. So how is it going to transform itself, adapt itself to the theaterization, working in a more pursue, inter-services and jointmanship kind of an environment. So to talk about all these issues and perhaps much more, she is a subject expert. We look forward to a very articulate and erudite speaker, that is General Sani, who spent about 40 years of military service, is Sword of Honor, Silver Gunner, done foreign courses, and name a thing that he has to his credit. Besides, he tenanted very important diplomatic assignments, being our additional military advisor in Russia and dealing with this procurement and also modernization in his capacity in the MO Directorate, being a theater commander of Western Command. And presently, his his interests alive and he's mentoring new initiatives in cyber and information security, steering environmental initiatives as under the rubric of Club of Rome, and is also distinguished fellow with prestigious think tanks and been a council member for about 6 years before he had to demit this because of the rules. And now he's very actively involved with the USI. In fact, just a few days ago, he delivered Bob Cathing memorial lectures, part of the DGAR USI initiative, looking at what was his role and what dynamics are taking place in the Northeast. So without further ado, may I request you now, sir, to enlighten us on the modernization of infantry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. So, firstly, I must express my gratitude to the for having given me an opportunity to come and stand here and share my views on a subject which is discussed. I think it's been discussed there over the last about a decade since the time the story of jointness and integration came into the fore, and I would say more importantly since about 2015 when he started seeing the transition of our national security management architecture under the NSA. This really has become a subject which is being talked about by everyone. So, so when you have a subject like this, it becomes all the more difficult to talk about it because everybody's got an opinion about it. So, well, I also have my own opinions. So I'll share that with you today. The subject, I would say, uh, undoubtedly resonates, creates friction, is a field that will not trade into break silos and trade into different areas. And that's one of the reasons why we've just been doing a lot of talking and we really haven't done the walk the talk as of now. So I think the issue of my presentation, though it is looking at the army, I would touch upon some of the issues which would transgress the boundaries of the army and look at the armed forces at large, or resonates with the rest of the armed forces while I'm sharing these ideas with you. I've only have 45 minutes, as he said, to talk, and I'll try and keep it in that. And as I said, the other second challenge that remains is that a subject which talked about how to keep the interest of the audience. So these slides there actually is so that you stop seeing my face and also look at the slide projector will actually create a certain amount of distraction when we're discussing this. So, okay, so let me now start. May I also pay my respects to Colonel Pyara for having set up a very, very fine institution. I think what he started, what he carved out, is what institutional building is. And he fought against odds to really make it survive. And well, as I said, something which the director talked about, how about the financial strain that he had? Well, when he took over also, there was a financial strain. He's still trying to grapple with it. So instead of looking at the academic pursuits, you then start looking at the financial balance sheets. So that's where the challenge remains. But undoubtedly, in spite of that, it survived. And I'm sure the efforts that he put in making the institutional framework right will see us through over these bad periods of time where you seem to be having challenges which digress you from your actual work. So modernization of the Indian Army, I think modernization of the armed forces and the army are something which happens constantly. And I think as far as India is concerned, I don't think we should be too worried about it. We have been seeing these transitions because we faced wars starting off from 62 right up to 99 and then up to Parakram. There's always been changes. There've been, I would say, in the area of your equipping policy, your field formations and structures, the the basic tactics and operational art as far as the functioning at the field formation level is concerned, it's always transited. I mean, we've gone from where we were in a defensive posture to becoming something like a cold start doctrine to a proactive strategy which you follow on the Western Front. So the challenge remained, however, is that doctrines and strategies were looked at very, I would say, cursorily, because you really didn't have the control on being able to execute what you thought because you were dependent on others to equip you and empower you with those kind of facilities. But it's a constant, and any army that doesn't do it would actually be failing in its duties. So neither has the Indian Army or the Indian Armed Forces really failed. But yes, there have been constraints, and which has actually kept us a little challenged. However, since the last conflict, I would say the Kargil war, the strategic landscape has undergone a change by two things. There has been the rise of China and his assertiveness. We have also seen advanced military technology coming into the fore, and this revolution in military affairs, which used to happen here now, technology is actually driving you to change your thinking because there are new facets that have come onto the battlefield. You've seen niche and disruptive technologies that have started reshaping warfare. Information warfare, influence operations have become something which people are aware of. And I think it's become part of our common lexicon, including in civil society, when you talk about gray zone operation, non-contact, standoff, hybrid war. They've all now sort of gone into the lexicon and have, and actually highlight specific nuances of executing battle. I think what the other thing that we really also have to look is that when I do a kind of an introspection, I think our current strategy at the deterrence level has been rather poor. We haven't been able to desist Pakistan from being able to continue doing what it is doing, irrespective of the asymmetry that exists here. We haven't been also able to ensure that China doesn't continuously nibble away at our territory and follow a pipeline. So there has been a challenge which we haven't done. And I think when I look at that, while we are going to look at the modernization of the Indian Army at the granular level, I think at the national security level, we will have to look at deterrence and building up deterrence capabilities, because that will be very critical as India transgresses into the middle income pass in the Committee of Nations. And another thing that we will have to also be careful about, that the modernization in the army will have to be looking at a resurgent India whose aspirational values have gone up. So today, when I say this, looking at an army like that, there are things like out of area contingencies, getting involved in things outside is the probability. So you better be prepared for it. Can't say that we're not going to do it. You can't put your head down and be an ostrich in the thing. So the modernization trend should also cater for this capacity to be added on, whether in a modular format or otherwise. So today, in the next 45 minutes, I thought I'll look at a few issues. I think the first thing is what has changed. Why again this relook? Undoubtedly, I'd look at the threat spectrum, which all of us know about, but I would just, to take my argument to a logical conclusion, I would talk about it. I'd look at the trends of the ongoing conflicts, and I thought that's the best way to see that these nuances that need to be talked about and changed are actually happening and manifesting on ground in some conflicts, or have manifested in some of the recent conflicts. So when we look at it, we can see that these areas are critical as far as India's modernization should go. And then I look for the pointers for modernization, the various verticals under which I think we should look at it, and I'll share my ideas for that. I will talk about what you mentioned, the director, look at the defense budget. But I said when you look at things like theaterization, jointness, integrated capacity building, capability development, these are all subjects which require a story of their own. So I'll just touch upon the nuances, the contours that need to be looked at. We can always discuss it. It's open in question answers. I'll try and take on whatever is required there. So I think what has changed, most importantly, and that I think is what it is the first thing that has changed is the geostrategic realities. I think the geostrategic landscape is in a state of flux because of three things. I read this in one of the articles and I thought they're so correct. It is because of economics, it is assertive nationalism, and there is an increasing contrariety that is existing in the thinking processes of nation states. And this is manifesting in the current and the ongoing and some of the recent conflicts that have happened. The geostrategic landscape in India's near and extended abroad is turbulent, and that's for a number of reasons. And I think, firstly, and most importantly, is this transition of balance of economic and military power from the Euro Atlantic to the Asia Pacific. It has its nuances. What it has done is it's made the Indo Pacific or the Asia Pacific the future power contestation arena. Because of that, the role and the kind of turbulence that we have. The second thing is this rise of China and its vigorous push for dominating the near and the extended abroad, both for its political, both for its economic, and also as a manifestation of wanting its rightful place in the emerging world order. And I think the third thing that I see here is the approach that it is adopting to stifle other middle income nations, especially India, in their vector of growth, which it sees as a clash with its interests. And that is creating this kind of turbulence in the environment. And we've seen the manifest in which we see Hong Kong, we see Taiwan, we see South China Sea, East China Sea, Senkaku Islands. You see India's extreme. You see what it has done with the Central Asian republics for territorial gains. So there is a complete mixture. There was also, again, in the Uzi River, the conflict with Russia that got emanated. So wherever this is happening, this kind of assertiveness, and which it impinges on India's own vision and growth path, does create a bit of a problem. And I think to counter, and other than that, wanting to be the second superpower, if not the singular superpower in place of China, of USA, there is a strategic competition that it is undergoing with China, with USA, and that has an impact on the security calculus as far as India is concerned. And as you're aware, because of the rise of China, to counter there has been a large amount of changes as far as the USA is concerned in steering global realignments and forging new groupings within the countries of this region. And India's pivotal role in the Indian Ocean and the position in the Asia Pacific or the Indo-Pacific has thrown us at center stage to this evolving turbulence that is there in the global, the future global emerging order. And this, of course, is much to the distaste of China. So that again becomes another bone of contention as far as they are concerned. But what is this resulting in? It is fueling existing conflict lines or creating new ones. And these changes can trigger and will influence the shape and type of future conflicts that we might be thrown open to. And I think India will also have to be conscious that if we want a place on the high table, be part of the rule-making bodies, with these authority, there are certain responsibilities that will come. And the Indian Army should be conscious of the fact that you will have to be conscious of this kind of a commitment, which can have an out-of area. The Navy is very much well equipped to it because of the kind of role it does. But the Army will have to also tailor and show that dexterity in its formations and the mind space to be able to take on these challenges. The second issue is the rise of China. And on this, why I'm talking about, a lot has been spoken, but I'd just like to flag a few things. His militarization and development has been incentivized by the aspiration to be in competition with USA. And it was not against India, but that's where the challenge was. And this quest for global dominance has seen its military arsenal grow in quantity and in quality. The modernization of the combat resources and capabilities has further created a challenge in the security calculus as far as India is concerned, because he happens to be our neighbor. The pace of change to achieve this parity with the USA is visible across all spectrums, not only the air, land, sea, but the cyber, the global commons, where it was. And now you're already seeing his footprint in Arctic. He's already gaining land and buying positions of strategic importance in the future evolving space, with melting happening and the northern routes becoming relevant as far as the future is concerned, maybe 2, 3, 4 decades from now. So I think he's doing this in all areas of functioning. But what it has done as far as India is concerned, it's given an asymmetrical military advantage in the region as far as China is concerned. And this is of concern as far as we are there. his capacity in cyber warfare, influence operation, hitting the cognitive domain of people, his restructuring of resources, of harnessing and actually taking it to the next level under its INEW strategy, under the PLA SSF, are things which are indeed challenging, and we need to be conscious. And maybe the action that India took to ban certain amount of these apps which had their roots within China was absolutely right. And I'll share about that, and we'll see about it a little area when we talk about some of the examples. I think it has a great advantage because of the lethality, the longer ranges, the capacities of the eyes and ears in the space, as well as his ISR capability to be able to wage non-contact and standoff engagements. And that's the worry for us, especially in the battlefield at the upper reaches, because battlefield protection, survivability becomes critical for us. And in a democratic country, if there is this emotional hype created by media of a few casualties, you will force the political structures to take decisions which may not be rational and may actually be tailored for the responses created in the environment by the local population. So I think that's an area of worry. And the third thing which I would like to say, which has changed, and that has a lot of, I would say, verticals, the changing character of war. Undoubtedly, the character of war has changed. And for that, there is three main issues that have happened. I think it is the innovative and disruptive technological developments, the emergence of primacy of non-state actors, and the reality of hybrid operations. We've seen it being done and being executed. And I think also the militarization of the global commons of cyber and space. These three are the key issues which have changed the character of war as we are concerned. So let me look at some of these separately. The impact of technology. I think the greatest change in modern weapon system and legacy systems because of technology has been the capacity for longer ranges, accuracy, pinpoint, and the kind of devastation the conventional firepower means can now wreak on the battlefield, which straight away impacts the kind of tactics and strategies that you need to adopt to be able to counter this. I think the effect of things like 5G, AI, machine learning, big data analytics, nanotechnology, where it's changing the materials that you utilize, these all are actually changing the methodology of our weapon platforms. The data processing processes have changed, and the military hardware's capabilities have changed. Now, when all this changes, what I think the director talked about, you suddenly have this onset of swarm drones, loiter munitions. You've got these as I say, autonomous weapon systems. You've got talking about the MMUTs, man-machine, unmanned teams that are going to be coming in. So all this is now action of that. And the other thing that really, which has been the technology has done, is this capacity of giving, weaponizing information war to become influence operations and be able to hit the cognitive domain of the target population as far as you're concerned. And what has the state-of-art communication done? It has given you and empowered you to be able to tackle this shortening of the OODA loop well, but it has also created vulnerabilities as far as your systems are concerned. So I think today, when we are talking about ChatGPT, generative AI, I'm sorry, predictive analysis is going to go to a different level. And I've used the ChatGPT once in a while. So when I have to give a talk, I sort of put in, unfortunately, it's not used to the military lexion, so it doesn't come out with too much of sensible answers. But if you look at regular day-to-day kind of activity on climate change, or tomorrow you want to look at water wars, you will get a lot of stuff which it gives you. So it actually points you and gets you data which is amazing. It suddenly opens your eyes and puts you and shows you a facet which you may have ignored otherwise. So I think it's changing the way things are happening. The role of non-state actors, the second issue. The emergence and primacy of non-state actors in collusion with or without state support, I don't think needs to be debated. India has been fighting this proxy war, which Pakistan has been supporting and ensuring that it is kept under the radar so that you do not cross that threshold of, I would say, the critical threshold, which might emanate from this sub-conventional to a conventional state. So we are conscious of it. But when we look at the global arena, and especially the turbulent West Asia that we have on our Western and beyond, is what? Is the aspect of ISIS, Al-Qaeda. You've had, whether it's the AQI, the story of the ISK that we are talking about, the Khorasan. I mean, all these are groups which have occupied space. And when you look at it at some stage or the other, ISIS had actually become a state within a state. So the kind of strength, somewhere like in the technology domain, You have economies of Googles and Meta, which can meet the economy of developing nations like ours. You also have this whole space of this new ideological thought, which is actually going to be dominating and making a difference as far as the space is concerned, that is, and the kind of conflict that will happen. As far as India is concerned, we will always see a waxing and waning of this thing. Because we unfortunately live in a very, very turbulent and a very, very unstable environment in our close proximity. And we have Pakistan, who remains the fulcrum of this kind of stuff. I mean, as they say, the shoe has started biting him as well, especially what he thought was his backyard, which all of us know about how the TTP has not really played second fiddle, and their relationship with Taliban, because of their ethnic linkages, does not allow Taliban to actually put pressure on them. So that whole complexity will continue, but it'll remain a problem that we have. This is irrespective of Pakistan's national security policy that talked about 100 years of peace with India. I think that's all meant for the Western press and for people to look. The third issue I would talk about is the weaponization of cyber domain. I think that's where the biggest worry is. Digitalization has connected a very interconnected world with ever increasing dependence on cyberspace. This dependence on cyberspace has created vulnerabilities for you. And these vulnerabilities have been exploited. We have seen this when we look at it, what started in Estonia, which has actually become the flag bearer for cyber, how to be cyber resilient, happened with Russia sometime in, say, the 2007-8, that period of time, till you had the outages in Ukraine. And there are umpteen occasions. I mean, if you just go on the net and put cyber attacks, you will get hundreds of these DDoS. You saw what happened in Georgia, what happened in the first Azerbaijan, the second Azerbaijan, Armenia conflict, where Russia did put an embargo on the news and did a blankout or a distributed denial of services attack. So there is a threat vector that has come in, which will have to be looked at. The fourth issue here linked to cyber is influence operation, which I talked about. And I think the advancement in internet and web-based application and this free flow of information and mushrooming of innumerable media and social networking sites, giving every individual the power of being interactive and being able to exchange information, thoughts and ideas in virtual communities and networks, has this seamless outreach with anonymity, deniability, and non-attributability has given and weaponized information to influence operations. And today you're getting new cognitive systems coming into being where it can be done. And I will talk about this when I look at the examples of the war to just highlight so that it'll make better sense than just good words of English to identify and talk about how serious is this impact of this whole story. And these new tools have transformed the space as far as psychological ops to information ops to influence operations. And that's where the challenge remains for modernizing our own army and ensuring narratives and counter narratives are met with equal elasticity and to be able to counter them. The last thing which I would really talk about here is space militarization. And that's worry. I think we all heard about that hypersonic glide vehicle which circumvented the globe just a year back by China. So the kind of strength that he has developed there, and the fact that when Ukraine was blanked out at the initial start of the Russian operation, you suddenly had the Starlink satellite system of LEOs, which gave you constant capability to continue seamless communication, shows the strength of domination in this space and the requirement of being able to tackle the challenges, because it is still a global common, really speaking. It hasn't really got segregated and segmented like what China has done in the cyber domain. When you talk about cyber sovereignty, China has said that the cyber sovereignty is linked to my territorial sovereignty. My territorial boundaries, anything within my territorial boundaries in the cyberspace is an infringement into my area. I mean, he's carried it a bit too far. Is it possible? Not possible. But well, that's the way his stance is. But this problem, I mean, this kind of I would say segmentation has not still happened in the space, so it remains a major challenge. So if I've looked at all this, being the issue, the three critical issues, non-state, technology, and this issue, I now need to look at space militarization, the threat spectrum. I think main adversaries, because of contested borders, continue to remain Pakistan and China. I don't think we have to be really, don't have to apply our mind too far. We talk about 2, 2.5, non-state actors, the proxy war, the insecurity and instability because of our internal ramifications within the country and fissures, we talk about a 2.5 scenario. But I think this is where, when I touched up right in the beginning on deterrence, I think we will have to do something that we can deter the Pakistanis from doing what they're doing. We should be able to deter a collusivity which we are conscious of is an area which will happen. This collusivity spans right across in a no war, no peace, from peace to the warlike. How it will manifest in the battleground, how it will take shape is a matter of debate, which you and I can keep talking. There are umpteen debates and articles written on this and people who have spoken in various forums. But that's an area that we'll have to be conscious of when we are carrying out our modernization. I think sorry. I think the biggest problem that has happened really is the events that have emanated along the border with China in Ladakh. I think this no war, no peace kind of a LOC environment that we had existing with the stress on our combat resources along our western borders at Siachen now seems to have sort of come into the area of Ladakh. And this creates challenges at the altitude and challenges, really speaking, only for the army of how to tackle this. We used to always go bananas trying to ensure that the Siachen rotation was right. And I think I don't know, umpteen number of gray hairs have been made because of trying to see who goes where and when does he come back. Now you've got a challenge of 2 divisions plus already deployed, an armored division worth of strength, which is already deployed in those areas. Artillery, which is over 2 artillery divisions capability, which are floating around that area. So we've got challenges, and this is going to stress the army, and we'll have to cater of how to challenge, how to get out. Can we find an alternative to reduce this? If we can, how do we do it? And that's where the challenge comes. I think the current imbroglio at the Afghan-Pakistan border and the internal turmoil in Pakistan for the foreseeable future seems that you know that won't have a conventional threat from there. But I think we have to be conscious of the fact that what happened in Gaza, I mean, a proxy war situation being escalated in the continuum from an area of proxy war to an actual conflict is very difficult to control. I think this escalatory continuum is very difficult to control. We'll have to be conscious about it. Internally, I think India was in the midst of consolidating its societal structures. And I think whether it is the Northeast, J&K, LWE, we still have problem areas that exist, fissures that exist. And what lo and behold, China retains linkages with these IIGs for providing them weapons, for providing them the necessary wherewithal. It's an area which we will have to be careful. The new 2 areas which I would say, which I should flag, which the army should look at, the US Army is already looking at, climate change and its impact. It's gone already into the lexicon of the military, US military, to be looked at as a challenge. It's something which we have to look at. Bangladesh, as per its own assessment in Vision 2021 and the Mujib Plan 2030, has looked at easily about 20 million climate refugees by the end of the next 2 decades. If that's going to happen, where the hell do they go? They come to India. If there's migration, what happens to our political, socio-political system? What happened to our military infrastructures? What happens to the armed forces, which will have to tackle some of these challenges that get arise if the paramilitary and the CPOs can't handle it? So I think it would be fair to summarize that the resolution of conventional and some conventional threats and internal security challenges of India are not likely to be resolved in the foreseeable future. Equality, social inequalities is a fertile ground for supporting terrorism, extremism, and instability. We need to be careful. Climate change is an area of concern. And with this as a backdrop, I thought, let me quickly go on and look at the trends in recent conflicts. And these are 3 conflicts I look at. And I said, I'll go over it with the fact to highlight issues which I think are critical for India to also look at for the modernization and changes that we are planning. So when I look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict, let me look at the politico-military level. It started off last year, it's continuing, it's going into the second winter. I mean, there is so much of it on the media, visual and print and analysis and all books that all of us are quite well versed with it. So I won't talk about why it happened, should it have happened, not happened, but what it has gravitated to is a proxy war between the US and Russia. What it has done is that on the blood of the Ukrainian soldiers, the economy of USA has taken a fantastic leap. It's defeated its recession. There's a growth of its military industrial complex by 30%. It has emptied the coffers of all East European states of their weapon systems. So today, as I said, I was just reading that instead of HIMARS, you've suddenly got a JIMARS that is being made now by Germany, which is back in the game. You have militarized and got defense spending increased. Germany has come on the board. Finland has come in. Sweden's crying. And I don't know whether Norway will do something about it. But what I'm saying is this whole process has created a churn which I think has supported the US. And maybe that's why they continue to support Ukraine till they run out of manpower and people. So what is the first lesson that I want to take there? Collaborative security. I think the era of collaborative security has paid dividends as far as Ukraine is concerned. It's got the support, it's got these capabilities. It has been able to get, as they say, international alliance of NATO, which has become the mainstay which it's been anchoring on. Irrespective of the fact that there's long drawn out war, but at the initial stages, it did pay dividend. And today, when we are looking at collaborative security in the Indo-Pacific, I think it makes sense. For that, do you need commonality of equipment, equipping policies, training and tactics? I think yes. So whether we want to do it under which umbrella, whether it's Quad, otherwise, we need to start looking at this kind of it. And maybe these 4 agreements with seminal agreements with the US does put us in the group of the like-minded countries in some measure or the other. Deterrence and strategic communication. I think this is something which I just want to quickly highlight. Russia, because of using that nuclear card, ensured that the Europeans and the West does not get involved physically in that space of coming. The kind of demilitarized zone it created on the border with Romania, Poland and all was possible because of the fear of them transgressing the Rubicon line of getting involved physically. So he was able to do it. Unfortunately, the strategic signaling which he had given when he told people that my red line is Ukraine, certain amount of areas of NATO expansion will not be accepted, was not accepted by the people. So there was a failure in strategic communication. The world was conscious when the Zapad 1 and Zapad 2 exercises happened on the borders of Russia and Belarus with these new structures of his just before the war and various command centers, which are the 4-pronged that came up. They were ignored. They were ignored by the West, so the signaling was not there. So I think the importance of deterrence and strategic communications and signaling is the area that we really need to be concerned. This is outside the mandate of the military, but I would say it is a mandate of part of our overall security strategy, where we will have to be one of the cornerstones of being able to be able to execute this in the manner that it is required to be given an answer to. The third thing which I thought I want to also just highlight is comprehensive national power. And this is where I feel the modernization of the armed forces, the theaterization is going wrong, because it's not an all-of-nation approach. It is again the 3 services. The 3 services will sort it out, yeah. You made it a fight with the 3 services. It's about the greater security architecture of this country. What about the PMF? What about the border security? What about the kind of resources that are being provided there? Do you realize you've had in the last 10 years, from a 30,000 BSF, you've got 190,000 BSF. You've got CISF. You've got from 60 battalions of CRPF, you've got 280 battalions of CRPF. Just look at ITBP has tripled in the last decade and a half. So where is this whole thing about the resources being eaten by the services? I'm sorry. This whole nonsensical stuff has actually been played up by the people and the bureaucrats, and every time they keep cutting your corner. So I don't think there is a shortage of money, really speaking. It's a matter of intent, the processes and procedures that need to be refined for a country like ours. We are not a banana republic. If we are a middle income nation, I think if I say 2% or 1.5% of 1 trillion or 1.5% of 5 trillion, well, I think we're getting our due here. And I think to short circuit this, the emergency powers that came in and been utilized by the current Prime Minister and the government have been the best source of re-equipping us. It's amazing the kind of money that has been spent out there to actually meet to address the issues where the shoe bites here. So I think I would put it like this, that this issue of comprehensive national power has to be looked at, that anything that happens in this country has to be looked at it. The weaponization of economy. And this is where I think I give full points and kudos to the current government, is the fact that the weaponization economy, as we saw what has happened in Russia, what has happened against Iran, we have looked at Atmanirbharta. Maybe COVID and pandemic gave us that eye-opener that you need resilience in supply chains, you need shorter supply chains, critical items need to be built yourself. You can't be relying on the other guy. And fortunately, the good part is that I do not see a future global order being a multipolar or a bipolar. I see it as a polycentric world order where linkages below the horizon will work. Today in Russia, you're still getting trade with below the horizon trade, which is happening with Europe. If India, Pakistan don't talk, but a large amount of our trade happens to Dubai. So the answer is that this polycentric world order will look at these issues, but I think we have to be conscious that this is an area and Atmanirbharta needs to be looked at very seriously. Let me look at some of the military nuances, and that's where I'd like to highlight. Relevance of convention conflict, and thanks, we have some great senior military analysts and academicians here, friends of ours, where we had reached the stage where suddenly people said, hello, yeah, the armed force is not required. We just talk about the cyber, we'll talk of space, and thank you very much. So thank God for this Ukraine conflict for us. I mean, we'll be in business for another few decades for sure. That otherwise we were going to be fossilized and put onto the hanger somewhere on the walls. So there is the relevance, and this will remain. Wherever there is territorial dispute, there will be relevance of fighting on the borders. May I put it? The unpredictability. I think this is where principles of war got violated by Russia. The speed, timing, the longevity, the capacity of the resources that he had and his training norms, which will manifest in a collapse of Kiev and the system that functions. So I think this unpredictability of war will have to be kept, and that's how we should vector. And luckily, we have contingency planning and other issues, but I think we need to take this to the next level and upgrade this. Continuing relevance of principles of war, which I said, I think we violated the whole lot of them here by Russia, and that actually has made them eat dirt in certain areas and has actually affected their image across the world of being a strong power, something like what's happened to the Mossad now in the Gaza Strip. I think so. You've really got a problem of sorts that has come in. I think the other thing that is, which I'd like to put here is, sorry, I forgot to talk about one issue. I wanted to talk about doctrinal review, which somehow I left out, but just let me quickly talk about a doctrinal review. I think the Gerasimov doctrine, which gave fantastic dividends till it captured Crimea and got them, using of the Wagner group in Africa and other parts, was fantastic. And the enunciating this policy gave shape to these people and this hybrid warfare in the right manner. I think there is a need to do it. Maybe there is a reinvention that requires now by Russia to look at these battle BTGs that it had formed. Is that the right way to have gone about it? Maybe that raises also questions on the IBGs that we had talked about. Is it requirement to have solidified structures, chiseled over generations and centuries, which hold the key to the organization, instead of making these tactical groupings into a permanent structure, losing the flexibility of carrying out operations? I think that's an issue that I thought needs to be. The other aspect that I would like to look at in this changing character of war. What is there in the changing character of war? I think the impact of technology. I think disruptive systems, we've talked about it. I'll talk about how influence operations are looking. 2 years back, this Hollywood movie called Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings in 2021 is a blockbuster hit in Hollywood. What does it have? Captain America is out. The hero who saves it has these Chinese features. Yeah. They're occupying the mind space of this young American kid, and who now looks at China with a different view. Yeah, he's Captain America's equivalent. Are you getting my point? This is influence operations that are happening. And this is where I think when TikTok went out, it was the right thing that happened. Because these are areas which are intruding into this area. So he's playing this game. India looks at next election to next election. I'm sorry, China has looked at this 100-year strategy. 2049 he's looking at. Now, if he's looking at 2049, he's got this whole young generation of America looks at it differently now. All the Hollywood movies showed Russia as the bad guy, which continues. That's why the Russia-Ukraine war is continuing, because everybody thinks, oh, that guy is a bum. Yeah. He needs to be bloody thrashed. I'm sorry, that's the way. And he's changed the perception of China. All the Hollywood big halls are now with Chinese money. So I think this is where influence operation comes in. We'll have to be very, as I say, the outcomes of modern warfare depend not on only who's and give less credence to this function. Report, fake news, reports showing Ukrainian forces winning. I mean, this was wrong. I mean, people like us who've served in Russia, we knew that this was not correct. But well, that's where the narrative got built up internationally and on our visual media. The other issue that I would like to look at is the issue of the militarization of, the militarization of global commons. I think the cyber capability, cyber resilience, the use of space for things. You just saw how Starlink function. Look at how Bharti Group's one web is going to make a difference. How will geospace fiber make a difference to our communication? This whole story on LEO is changing. So we need to have this weaved into our future modernization. We can't talk about transparency and this thing of the battlefield and still go back here. हमारे को रात को night fighting device नहीं है, भाई पता नहीं चला. Our systems are not working. We keep talking about these beautiful things for presentation, but we forget it when it comes to the ground. Get back to nitty gritty, bhaiya. I'm sorry, no network. Get your paper pencil out here. Start functioning. So I'm just saying this is the challenge which we will have to mean, and that's where the mindset comes in. Non-contact engagements, drone warfare. I think it showed. And what have you seen? Drone and counter drone. They lost out because of the equipment that they had, the air defense, but they countered it subsequently. Because you've got loiter munitions, you've suddenly got nets on the Russian tanks to stop this loiter munition coming and having contact with you. So I mean, these changes and transformations are happening. This is what we'll have to look at. It will have to be weaved in into any kind of our equipping policy that we look at ahead. And I think at the tactical level, which I talk about, you'll have to look at that there was a loss of trust in the functioning it happened. Because they got impacted by the time they took decisions from the top, there was a slowness, they lost a lot of ground, loss of casualties that Russia happened, which could have been avoidable. But I think this tactical dexterity or small team ops, decentralized command and control and decision making at the point of contact will actually have to be looked at very seriously. We are doing it well thanks to the CIOps, but I think this is an area which needs to be formalized correctly. And I think we'll also have to look at modulations of these doctrine. We will have to see if Wagner Group, I mean, if it's true that we were wanting to kill this Panun guy, I'm sorry for anybody if I heard. Well, if we were, I think I'd actually feel quite happy that India has actually matured to that level that can do it. Well, if it can't, I'm sorry, this is meant for Chatham House rules, not to be quoted, otherwise I'll be the next guy who will be shot out somewhere else. But the issue is that issues like these are showing that we will have to be careful. And this might be just a narrative, for all you know, which might have been thrown up. So I don't know. So I mean, today I start questioning all these things. So be a little careful of issues like these. And the last thing I said is organizational groupings like these BTGs that they formed and trained. Was it right? No, it wasn't able to do the job. So these structures which have been formed in the armed forces and in the naval and in the army have their time tested, retain them, have the flexibility and dexterity to be able to change and group and regroup, which was always the story. Instead of going into new structures, which will take time to do, and then let not management issues overtake operational issues, because itne general banne chahiye, itna ye hona chahiye, everybody get confused in that and our operational capability. I think that issue we'll have to look at. Let me quickly go on to the, I've talked about this. Let me quickly talk about just three things in Azerbaijan and Armenia. A war of drone warfare, which came in. It also highlighted the Armenians' shortfall of the South, the Russian equipment that they had of air defense. And the methodology of the second that came out is the capacity of our radars to pick up the small RCS signature does not exist. So I think what does it say? It required that drones, swarm drones are there to stay. Please weave them into your activity, but you need defensive measures to be taken. How do you improve and utilize your legacy equipment to be able to do this with necessary modifications? Well, you buy everything outside, that's the second stage. But you can improve upon these areas, exploit what you have. I think do not allow uncontested skies for drones. How can you tackle that is the issue that you have to look at. So these drone killers and the methodologies that exist need to be imbibed and introduced into our service, because China has these capacities. Pakistan may have only been nascent or maybe a bit below or at par with what we have. But correct, he has the capacity to get the Winglong kind of UAVs from China and create a complete mayhem as far as the battle is concerned. It has also highlighted vulnerabilities like personnel, field fortification, non-mechanized target, tanks, BMPs, and radiating targets. Heavy radiating targets become the homing place for the LM. So how do we tackle this issue? The reason why I said this is we also have the similar equipment that we are. It's also of the same vintage. How do you tackle this challenge that is coming in? A lot is being done in the Army and the Air Force, but I know it's an area that we really need to look at. How do we do it? The detection capability and counter drone strategy will have to be looked at. And utilizing this AI, VR, and AR to ensure greater SSKP is the answer that we will have to go ahead. It's being done. And I'm sure there are a lot which is being done, which I can't speak of, which I'm sure the people in uniform today will be able to would be conscious of it. And the third thing that I would like to talk about is the Gaza operations. What does it show? Reality of hybrid to conflict. Uh, Internal fissures within a country can be exploited. You see this whole Netanyahu and this judicial reforms that he did, the whole country was divided. Total amount of was looked at a point when people will come. So, I mean, if we have fissures within our own country, get exploited. What's happening in Manipur gets exploited by China to an extent, by people who are of inimical elements. So we have to be conscious of this issue. In proxy war and at times of rapprochement, when things are quiet, please let complacency not come into your functioning. 370 gone, a lot of tourism, a lot of this thing happening in Kashmir. I'm sorry, proxy war is on. It can fire any day. Let not complacency come in the way you and I function. For that, we are empowered. We will have to ensure that we do it. Analysis requires an open mind. When inputs come in, please look at it de novo. Don't, "Arey, yaar, to kar hi nahi sakta." I mean, beyond, I mean, and as from what I hear now, they had already got copy of these plans about 6 months back, and everybody said, "Oh, this is poppycock." What happened in Kargil was talked about in 2 war games before that, and we said, "Yeah, it can't happen," but it happened. So I think int analysis and people who deal in this domain have to look at indicators with a de novo look. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you'll fall in. And lastly, I think overreaction can be counterproductive. What they're doing there. So I think we'll always have to be it'll have to be a measured stroke that you want to hit. So if this be the issue, let me say that the pillars of modernization of the Indian Army need to be, and 6 pillars that I look at. You have to look at force structuring. You will have to look at doctrines and strategy. Capability development is one, and capacity building is the second issue. You'll have to look at professional military education. We'll have to look at HR policies. And last but not the least, which my IFS friends generally don't like it when I talk about it, is military diplomacy and how important it is in South Asia. And I saw, thank God for it, that we saw the previous foreign secretary taking the army chief when he went to Myanmar and Nepal. So I think there is hope that we will not fall into the bureaucratic quagmire of files and non-files and kill the issue, but there is a role and task for it. So let me talk about this. So I think what I would say is that though the threat profile indicates increased probability of non-kinetic engagements, there is a real possibility of a short and intense conventional conflict, irrespective of what is happening in Russia, Ukraine. When superpowers and big powers play, these wars can drag on. But I don't think with the current focus on geoeconomics and economic linkages that exist across the world, that they will allow people like us and you, when we have a confrontation, to take it beyond the realm. It can happen with China, but China, I don't think, wants to get into that kind of a quagmire. I think it's learned some lessons from Ladakh. When you captured these areas of Kailash range, we also have to understand that when leverages have that much of weightage and capability, they can't be extended across the world. So a leverage has a tangible gain that you can gain, but it relies that in the tactical contact battle, it's going to have a problem. So if that be so, I think the greatest pointer for us is that non-contact war that will happen, standoff that will happen. Let's, in these open terrace areas of Ladakh and the hills in Sikkim, we better have our things properly covered. I think force structuring and organization. I think the cumulative impact of technology, militarization of the new domains, and the shape of the future conflicts will undoubtedly be an MDO, multiple domain operations. I think we'll have to be multi-domain operations. And I think we will have to be careful about being prepared for that. And maybe that's the answer why you're going in for things like joint structures, the shortening of the OODA loop, and looking at it. We will have to look at convergence and integration of capabilities across domains. I mean, the silo based of NCIIP here, offensive cyber here, DRDO does something, Army, Air Force, Navy does something. You've got the NTRO doing something. I think this whole story will have to come in and at some stage evolve into a cyber command, evolve into a space command. Because I'm a uniformed guy, I always feel that the greatest discipline to any such structures at inception and conducting will always remain ours. We know how to wear and tread softly where it matters. So maybe these are areas which we'll have to look at very seriously. And I think the unity of command has become criteria. So now, if that be the case, let me quickly now look at the issue of what should be there. There are 6 or 7 things I'll flag. joint commands and theater commands that's being talked about, I think what we have to keep in mind is that any future organization that synergizes the capabilities of the three services should appreciate the service-specific organization culture, functioning methodology, and manning requirements. I think there will be a need to harmonize differing frameworks, cultures, and mindset. And if we can address these issues, then will you be able to get the right mix in that particular command. Just to amplify what I said, Army and Navy are structured in a decentralized manner. Resources are decentralized under the span of control of the authority that exists. And as at inflection points, additional resources are given to him, or the span of control shifts from a brigade to a div to a corps or to a command. That's how. So that's how our integrated theater battle groups were looked at, or is looked at. Whereas the Air Force is a functional command. Their functioning is different. Because of the speed and vastness of battle arena that they can address simultaneously in near real-time capability, their resources at some stages need to be centrally controlled to be able to make a difference on the west, on the east, on the north, on the south, whichever area. So I think this functional command capability, and maybe that's the issue that we keep saying in the news, this deharmonizing between Air Force being the spoiler to any thought that happens out here. I mean, that's a military view, army viewpoint. I might be wrong in that, but I would say that this issue will have to be addressed. How does a functional command and how does a decentralized command coexist in this integrated manner? And also on top of it, that you've got shortage of resources. So you can't give permanent allocation of resources. And as you know, India is still a growing country. जो मेरे पास आता है वो मेरा रहता है. I'll give it to you when I think कि मेरे को शायद नहीं जरूरत पड़ेगी. So are you getting my point? So you've got a challenge of sorts that comes in. So I think this whole story will have to be looked at in that. I think for the C2 function, there are two other issues that have to be come up. We have to look at military strategic and operational strategic level structures. What do I mean by this? If you've created joint commands in whatever format and shape you have, the command and control will emanate to the CDS. So at the military strategic level, you'll require a group that controls this, gives it the direction, does the planning, executes it, and sees it, takes it to its logical conclusion. Similarly, you would require at a theater commander's level a new organization and structure. You might take resources from the three service headquarters and sort of divide them, but the theater is going to be a new baby because the commands still remain. So the functioning at the command levels will remain. So this ops strategic and a military strategic structures will have to be created, which will take on this responsibility, and that's the answer we need to look at. I think when you're looking at national security structures, PMFs at the external borders, I'm sorry, I can't have somebody sitting at Chumur of ITBP who talks to Delhi and then it comes through the channel through MO to tell the brigade commander sitting there that this is happening in front of you. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I mean, a lot has got resolved, but I'm just sort of taking this to the other extreme to make a point. So I think irrespective of what the group of ministers stated in the Kargil report and in consonance with that, I think the operational control in this no or no peace situation needs to remain. I mean, imagine out of 30 or 40 battalions of BSF, we had those 10 battalions which used to be under command or op control of the army. It's gone to 180 battalions, you still got only 10 battalions. And the situation is getting more and more convoluted. So operational control for apex level direction in an area where there are uncontested and contested borders, I think needs to be looked at. So then will this joint theater make the necessary sense? I think integrated logistics and operational training facilities will have to be looked at. We'll have to look at expeditionary capability. So I think let's look at a logistic core. It just transgress, leave the AME initially out because of the structures that are separate, move it in later. But I think we can combine this and start commissioning officers into the logistic core for which is looked after by people who are logisticians who look at all aspects related to the supplies and to ordnance supplies. And maybe later on gravitate to that. We need to harmonize our training establishments, undoubtedly. I think if large services can run institutions, some amount of identity is required, but some amount of merging of these institutions is a possibility. Charter of Special Forces Division. And the second last thing that I would like to flag here is the information domination operations. We have created structures, but I don't think we have empowered and given them the thing. We create a defense cyber wing, but we create another parallel organization under the bureaucratic control. We give the space agency, but we move something else under the bureaucracy. I'm sorry, this is not the way it should go out. You should look at harmonizing this at the right level. Civil military fusion. I think is the last thing that's happening. There's a lot done. ADB, the Army Design ATBs, all that have now gravitated. Army Design Bureaus have come. It's become much better. I mean, I'm now also on the other side seeing it 6 years or 7 years down the line. I'm also sitting and do advise on the advisory board of a corporate which is in the Make in India defense. And I see there's a change from the time when we were there to what has happened now, but there's still miles to go. That's what I would say. Let me quickly look at the focus areas for capability development. The second issue I said. I think I'll just flag this because I won't talk because everybody knows about it. MDO, multi-domain operations, we'll have to be ready. Information dominance operations, you'll have to be ready. We have the necessary tools. We need to have the synergization of the various silos that deal with this. We have to build up an asymmetric fighting capability. And I think risk mitigation measures for asymmetric threats. It's good English, but I think there are ways that we can see it has been done and we can take it out. I think smart and integrated border management, where one is the resources control. The issue is that what the BSF has, the CRPF has, the ITBP has, and the Army has should supplement. On ground, I can say we have done that. Wherever we had gaps in the Army, we made the BSF supplement it or the CRPF. So it's happening to a great extent. When I raise this issue, it doesn't mean that these are all de novo and we are starting from zero. A lot has happened, but these are areas where we need to concentrate to get it more honed up. I think seamless and real-time ISR and situational awareness. This future infantry soldier, the issue of maritime domain awareness, which they've done across the space today. India is part of the whole structure. We have a setup here in India as well. I think somewhere the situational awareness capabilities, both for the soldier, the guy on the sharp end, to the middle level leadership, to the senior level, will all have to be created. We will have to look at secure and reliable communication. High-tech weapons and use of niche technologies, I think, is an answer that is happening. Two things which I will leave: battlefield survivability. Actually, if today I have to give it importance with the China threat, is the most important capacity and capability. And this is a function of both mobility and the countermeasures that you take there. So the third thing that I said, which I flagged, would be capacity building and Make in India. I'll go to doctrines and strategies a little later. So when I talk about capacity building, I think this Make in India and Atmanirbharta that you're talking about is what is capacity building. This corporatization of the OFB, I mean, the step in the right direction. The review of the DRDO structure, the delegation and allocation of R&D resources to the public and the private sector are areas. Getting the academia and setting up these smart centers of excellence at the IITs and the IIMs is the area that you're going. So I think this is what is capacity building. And I think we should not decry it. We should make it a level playing field, because let me assure you, countries only develop, departments only go when the government gives them the necessary policy support instead of running it. And that you've seen it happen in the auto sector, it happened in the IT space. If it had been government run, I don't think we would have been there where we are today in digitization. You've got umpteen platforms that have come up. So I think even in defense space, slowly this corporatization needs to go, where make level playing field. Do not let mindsets come in. Mindsets have changed in the Navy, but the Army is the most stagnant to be able to take Make in India kind of products. Look at the say version 1, version 2, version 3 coming in, because you'll have to support these people. If you've got from 300 today, 2,000 MSMEs working here, those guys need money here. If you keep reinventing as the change in appointment happens of us in the Army, then I'm sorry, they're going nowhere. So you'll have to take the version 1 and get the version 2 getting better. Let me look at the third thing that I wanted was PME. The next thing is the PME, professional military education. I think velocity of change, both in character and societal transformation, has therefore made it incumbent for militaries to review the training and recruitment policies. Agniveer, is it a good or a bad issue? I will reserve comments, but it's an issue that we'll have to look at, because maybe it might have been done under this garb, but was it right? What is wrong is a question which a lot of us have in our minds. We will also have to institute processes for continuous upgradation of knowledge. Today, I think the problem and challenge is coming in is that do you see this capacity from generalist to specialist? How can we get the right mix within it? How can we meet the aspirations of the individuals and the organization, harmonize the two to ensure that we actually grow in the right direction? I think that's where the challenge comes in. So our structures of PME, like these just-in-time courses, are a great idea to empower people who hold appointments where they can be put in the right places. I think there is also, I think, for future leaders, which is happening in the corporate world because of this uncertainty in the corporate, with the future of corporates and the direction of their growth, is, I think, a risk-taking capability. I think the Indian armed forces are getting risk averse. And I think somewhere down the line, this risk-taking capability of leadership at different levels of authority, you get perks and privileges of being at a particular place, but you also have the responsibility to take on that risk taking, which is good for the organization. So I think this I'm finding is a transition that is happening. But well, like all old people who've retired and veterans, they say, "Yaar, hamare time to acha tha, bura hai." Maybe the challenges are different. I'm not putting it in that, but I think risk taking as an issue has to be taken and looked and addressed. The next issue is HR policy. I think the HR policies have to be harmonized for integrated structures. It was great last year, I think. Finally, the ideas took up the issue of disciplinary proceedings being done irrespective of the arm or service that you are in. It was followed a chain of command. That's already been done. I think aptitude-based posting, longer tenures, and I think somewhere down the line we have to revisit this promotion policy for us. Major generals and above should give you 30 to 35% of their service in the senior ranks if you want the armed forces to grow. We have taken baby steps, but if the bureaucracy can become at 17, 18 and have 40, 45% of their tenure in the directional space, I think we need to change that. And I think we talk about the Gen Z, the Gen Y, the Gen X. I'm sorry, the capacities and capabilities of the younger generation is far superior to ours was. They need direction at the right level. And I think that's where, when you talk about mentoring, I think the direction level thing has to come out. And the last issue that I thought is military diplomacy. I think World War II, all of us see these movies on Netflix. I mean, it shows umpteen occasions where military diplomacy has actually broken the rank. And I think today, with the kind of equation that we have with the armed forces in South Asia, in our extended neighborhood with the Middle East, with areas in West Asia, the armed forces are a great tool, and a military diplomacy as a subset to our normal diplomatic initiatives will go. The Navy anyway executes it in such a big manner. And this whole evacuation, the perception management of people across the world of how India has come to power and we look after our own anywhere is all thanks to the Indian Navy or the Air Force. So there is a role and task that is there. It's unofficial, but I think it somewhere needs to be made official. So when you have these people in the military, in the senior space of directional level for 30, 35%, military diplomacy can be a subset like what the West world did. For you and I, you serve a diplomatic tenure, you come and do still back instead of just pushing paper in a headquarter, which any clerk could have done. So I think those are areas we'll have to look at. And in the end, I may state that the armed forces need to be deliberate in formulation of their action plan, carry out restructuring and redesign of the forces, in tune with the future realities and warfighting, but thereafter, change management needs to be with an open mind, dexterity, and promptly. Then you can't be debating. So that's where I think being in uniform has that you are autocratically democratic as far as this is concerned. When it is a matter of debate, it is democratically decided. After that, when it is to be executed, then it's an autocratic system of functioning. I think, and that autocratic democratic functioning of the man in uniform is the answer if you want to see changes being done. And maybe we have the political leadership and the bandwidth today which can take those decisions. What happened for CDS and DMA is known to all of us. Something which was not perceived was put because the thought was planted that how do you have, if you want changes, you need to take drastic measures. We've lost due to the unfortunate bit about where Bipin Rawat's demise, but irrespective of that, there's a lot that's been done. There's a lot that can be done. And you and I will also have to take decisions like that. And maybe people like us sitting outside the uniform today can at least be the mirror to show you where things are. And you, naturally, the people in uniform, like we've got officers sitting here, are the guys who will have to steer it and take it to the logical conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I come to my end. Thank you very much. I've taken 5 minutes extra out of that 45 minutes, but I'm there. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions and answers.
Well, just wait. Please, could you please wait? Just let me, just thank you. Sir, please sit, yes. I want to thank Jan Sani for putting whole range of issues on the table for discussion. We have very informed audience here, and I would like to sort of, in addition to what he had said, I'd like to flag few more issues to stimulate our minds for a more invigorating discussion. Firstly, I think it's, even if it is sarcastically, it is said that militaries all over the world are actually quite good at improving the existing systems to fight the past, the last war better, you know. So that's exactly what is the malaise that does does Indian Army actually is suffering from a similar malaise or not is the moot point. But what we are looking at here is that we need a future ready Indian Army to work in a joint force environment in a full spectrum conflict. That's the bottom line we are looking towards. And what I find here, I mean, without being critical about it, that the biggest challenge here is, firstly, how do you deal with your mental maps? How do you deal with your group thinking? How do you deal with your predictability syndrome? How do you deal with your zero error syndrome? These are the large issues of mindset which must form part and parcel of our military education. That's one. Then the second issue is that the new reality as we see today, it's an Indian Army is an operational army. This LOC, LAC combined, which is actually assumed a factor of continuity. It is not going to go away that you have a very heightened situation at the LOC and LAC at the same time. Now, if you look at LOC, I mean, there has been a shift of resources from the western borders to our northern borders. And a certain void has come to exist on our western borders. Now, that coupled with the very high terrain friction, you have built up areas, you have hostile population, and Pakistan already has a ecosystem of terrorists. This is the new reality. How are we going to fight on our western borders is something that we must be contemplating. Then this Pakistani panache for what you call is full spectrum nuclear capabilities with zero range options that they are talking about today. Virtually, I mean, it will be the ground forces who will face the brunt should Pakistan do the misadventure of playing its nuclear card. How are we going to deal with that? That's another issue. As far as LIC is concerned, we are dealing with new realities. There is a forward military posturing by China. There is a multimodal infrastructure that is coming up in Tibet in a very big way. Then you have the surge capability in terms of rapid deployment forces from the central military command, which can be brought to bear there, and that can change. Chinese are operating on interior lines of communication, right? With the fantastic capability to shift forces from one sector to another, whereas we are operating on exterior lines of communication there. This creates a mismatch in terms of our mobilization in time and space. How are we going to deal with that? The kind of capabilities which the Chinese have in terms of targeting your operational energy centers, right? In terms of your the second RT or the rocket force capabilities and other strategic support capabilities. Where are those redundancies? What are our counter ways to deal with this? These are some of the issues that we need to look at. And finally, I just want to say that let's face fact. The Chinese today have the capabilities to prosecute war in at the tactical, operation, and strategic depth, and also in the cognitive domain. Where does Indian Army stand in terms of its capabilities to match those kind of things? What are our quid pro quo capabilities, offensive capabilities? Are we prepared for that? These are the issues. And then do we have our own capabilities of what you call is anti-access, anti-denial? Our capabilities to semi Chinese mobilization along the line of Sangpo River or along the line of Shikwane? What is the role of Air Force? And if there are certain inadequacies in our capabilities, how Indian Navy is going to balance that out by being a force of deterrence at sea? This has to be looked at in a whole, in a joint doctrine, a joint military kind of a strategy, if that military modernization of any service has to take place. So these are some of the issues that I think we need to discuss over and above what General Sani has brought out. So that there is a total paradigm shift in our military modernization mindsets and thinking. And I've been recommending here as DG USI to RTRAC and many other service headquarters, senior appointments, that let's actually embrace this concept of red teaming. When you have an external agency of cross-domain experts who give you an independent opinion to the way you are visualizing war and the way you're planning for war. If you have the red teaming concept, probably we'll bring in cross-domain experts to give certain vital inputs to our hierarchy, and probably it will serve them in good interest. So sorry, I mean, I was just interrupting. There was a question coming up, but in the backdrop of what General Sani has said and the issues that I have flagged, we can look forward to a very invigorating question answer session. And we'll take a cluster of questions and then take his response. Sir, you were saying something from there. Kindly identify yourself.
I'm
Yeah, it's working, it's working.
I'm Air Marshal L.K. Verma, ex-DGMS chair. So I may not have knowledge in depth as far as operations are concerned, but I have some basic questions. One question is, how do you see the induction of Agniveer in the sea services? Is it going to improve your capability, or is it going to be a political exercise? And the second question is that how do you look at LOC and LAC?
Sorry?
How do you look at LOC and LAC? LOC is, I think, I'm right, with Pakistan. LAC is with China. Now, why do we call it LAC? Because it is relevant in the sense that the slice which China has been doing, if I occupy that much, then the armed forces of the Indian armed forces are not there. That becomes my LAC. Is it a fact or is it different? So the difference between LOC and LAC, it can be explained. And the first question, of course, was about the Agniveer. Thank you.
Yeah, General Lal.
The transformation of the armed forces.
Oh, they recorded, so that's why it's.
Hello. On the transformation of the armed forces in 2012. So I would like to highlight on a few points with that basic background. And earlier we were in the Perspective Directorate, so we had worked a little on it. Firstly, I would like to compliment General Sani for an outstanding coverage, in which I think so you have covered the riders and the approach before you cause the modernization. And as General BK was very correctly saying, Director USI, that ultimately board structuring, threat perceptions will have to be worked out for a threat both which is existing on ground from the west and the east and north, and the the objectives which both these adversaries have. China has openly declared that by 2036 they will have Arunachal with them and Ladakh, same way Pakistan. So therefore these are not imaginary, these are real threats which are there in front. Over and above this, a few points I would request you to highlight. Is, shall we call it modernization or transformation? The issue is very simple. You stick to just improving the legacy systems, legacy weapon systems, then you are hitting on modernization. The effect, today's environment, technology environment actually is almost forcing you to look beyond that into a transformative mode. then we start thinking of a transformative mode. In fact, earlier we had tried to push in this idea because the real cost-effective utilization of the armed forces in tomorrow's environment and the way things are evolving at a very rapid rate would require a transfer. The difference is known to everyone. But obviously, we being a legacy-based country and where a lot of things are imported, therefore, we'll have to probably go in a phased manner. Even transformation, you cannot approach directly. Just a word of caution, it has to be done in a very phased out manner. But where you change a concept, or the way AI is coming up, will it change the concept of warfare? It has to be tackled, and how the force structures will come up, how your PME, that is professional military education, will be effective. These are the issues that has to be tackled on ground today as we are reorganizing. If we are not doing reorganization, then we should try to do it on these lines. The second point is alliances. And the situation in the Ukraine war, we have US forces and European forces in a way manning certain areas, command and control areas. Do we see a situation, because the way we are carrying out alliances, there may be a situation like that where we may require working out anticipated or some capabilities of that in our own organization. Integration of space assets. Space is real time. Real time information you want to get on the plate. Is the soldier in a position to harness that? We'll have to bring it out in the force structure and organization. This has to be further improved on. I would like you to comment on this. And lastly, as I said, I've already covered the threat perceptions are real, and therefore we'll have to come to reassess. Total force is same. We may not be able to make a quantum jump in the force levels. In fact, we should make an attempt to reduce force levels and recycle that money to technology. How it can be done, I have worked it out. It can be done. It's very easy, not very difficult. But these are certain areas where you can highlight. Thank you, sir.
Commodore S.J., please, last question, then next thing.
So thank you for it was very fun. Okay. Very happy points to me, which I like your opinion, sir. See, you alluded to difference at the beginning of the talk. But this was primarily you were referring to conventional deterrence. I just want to know, having had a nuclear doctrine now for over 2 decades and being a recognized nuclear power with 2 nuclear adversaries, how much of our nuclear capability is influencing conventional force structuring or approach to conventional warfare? Is there any? Because the impression one gets is that in the absence of any comprehensive national security strategy, these are 2 silos. Conventional structuring is happening separately and our nuclear capability is developing on a parallel track. And we're not really looking at both in a comprehensive manner. Second thing, sir, most of the conflicts we talked about had a very high degree of asymmetry between the 2 forces. How would this impact us? Because we're going to be fighting, our threat is against 2 almost evenly balanced militaries, not with the kind of Gaza, Hamas, Israel, or even Ukraine, Russia, for that matter, that kind of asymmetry in forces. You made a very passing reference to expeditionary capability. We're looking at theater command, sir. At some point of time, we're going to be looking at theater command press beyond our borders, if you're looking into play on the big stage. So are we looking at expeditionary capability in that same sort of comprehensive manner? Are we looking at expeditionary capability 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line? Is there any joint thinking on this happening? And fourth thing, you mentioned collaborative security in the Indo-Pacific. I absolutely agree with you, sir. Admiral Mike Mullen had talked about 1,000-ship Navy concept in 1996. But the point is now that we see these Houthi rebels attacking shipping in the Red Sea, we are seeing the fishers coming in. India doesn't want to be an active part of that coalition, which is going to take on the Houthi rebels if they attack ships. We want to play a different role. We consider ourselves security partners in the Indian Ocean. So when it really comes to the crunch, how collaborative will the security actually end up is something we need to ponder over. I mean, will we get into another guy's war?
This is recording. यहाँ से हो रहा है ना record आपका? I can speak like this. Mic तो नहीं चाहिए. Mic तो नहीं चाहिए.
No, it's there. You have the mic.
I have, okay. Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Sorry for that. Okay, first, let me just put it that the subject of modernization is extremely vast. I mean, if today you want to get down to the granular, I would drop about 100 lines. So the aim today was that the contours and the directions and the verticals which we should need to address for modernization, they should be flagged. Challenges, yes. Finances, yes. How do you meet this? Methodologies, as you said, yes. So I thought there's studies of their own, but I'll try and tackle some of it in passing. But my aim today was to flag issues of modernization. There are challenges to it, 100%. I mean, there are challenges to the Make in India capacity building. There are challenges today to get the harmonization for the 3 theatres. I mean, there are challenges. So that's a separate study. We've had talks on theaterization where I've talked about all these things also on challenges. So I'm not going to touch upon why these challenges are there, but let me just take some of the questions out here. I think first it started with the Air Marshal there, sir. You talked about Agniveer. Let me just put it, this is a decision taken by the people in uniform. You and I might have views on it, which I think we should. Yeah, I am speaking in a mic, sir. Sorry. No, I mean, that's the physical manifestation of it, sir, but otherwise I'm speaking in a mic. So I think you're right, sir. Perceptions of winning wars and seeing that you have won wars is the story. So just let me put it, sir, that as far as Agniveer is concerned, it's a action that has been taken and is already in this third year of or second year of implementation. So I'll reserve comments of how good or bad it is. We will talk about this over a cup of tea because I don't think this needs to be debated because the decision has been taken by the people sitting in uniform. So I won't talk about it. What will be the long-term impact? I'm sure any decision that has been taken will look at the level 1, level 2 kind of impact, and then only would have this transition happen. So I'll refrain from comments on that particular issue. But, well, it's a thing that's happening. But we'll talk about it in a cup of tea, sir. LOC and LAC, I just want to put it, I also always used to think that this LOC and LAC is maybe a Hollywood creation, but I'm sorry it isn't. I think we've had debates somewhere down the similar accord. You actually came up with before that you did come up with this term of LOC that got formalized and a thing which they try to throw in a thing called working boundary. So these have, I would say, historical pinnings in some bilateral meetings that have happened. Similarly, in the LAC, as you're aware, in the 1990s till late 1990s to about 2002, we started border talks after Rajiv Gandhi went in 1993 to China or 95, and we started this. So the LAC, while we were doing that bit out there of chatting, where we exchanged the maps of the middle sector with China, before we came to the western sector and this chaos of talks got thrown out because our claims and their claims sort of varied in concept. The word LAC did get, I would say, semi-formalized in the manner. So both LOC and LAC are terms that was have pinnings in some kind of a documented or a minuted kind of an issue. So that's the status as far as LOC and LAC is concerned, sir. The issue coming on to the issue of General Lal talking about force structuring as a sorry, the threat manifestation you're talking about. No, let me just put it. I think in my threat manifest thing, I talked about 2 issues. You are looking at both the motives, both the opponents. You are looking at the issue of collusivity. You are looking at the internal thing. So how do we play it? And this is where I talked about the bigger role of deterrence. Is it possible for us today at the economic and the kind of stature that we have gained to be able to create a condition that you ensure that this collusivity remains in the overt domain, in the covert domain and does not manifest in the overt domain? That's the issue. I think that's where the challenge will lie. A story on deterrence, from nuclear deterrence to cyber deterrence to issues related to that is a separate subject. But yes, that's an area we'll have to really look at, sir. The issue is coming on to the issue of modernization and transformation. I thought it's more a matter of semantics, sir. I think it's a matter of English, sir. I'll give you a quick example on what happened. So many years back, I was the colonel. I was BM of a brigade. We came back from Sri Lanka. We were doing training for going into river ops. So the colonel, when we submitted our plans and induction, everything, so the colonel just said, "Hey, Arun, you may look at it." Yeah. So I said, "Okay, I'll look at it," and we didn't do anything about it. Yeah, because I looked at it, and my commander looked at it. I was his BM. So when the exercise was on, the Joshi came. He He said, yeah, I told you to look at it. Sir, मैंने आपसे तब पूछा था कि is it a direction or is it कि look at it? हमने look at it किया, but we found our process the better way. So we've executed it that manner. But if you had said this is the direction of the higher headquarters, then I will take executive action. I asked you, sir, did you talk? So it's the same story on modernization and transformation, sir. I think you can interpret it either way, but the issue is you are looking at, and that's why I flagged those 6 pillars of modernization, whether you take them under transformation, whether you take them under thing, you will have to look at capability now, capacity for the future course of action. You will have to look at organizational structures for the future. You will have to restructure issues, which is happening for looking at information ops and influence ops already in the army. So I think it's a combination of both that will happen. I think, as I said in the last thing, the biggest challenge today which corporate world is facing and which the army will face is this process of transition. How do you retain the edge while you're transiting from one phase to the other? And that's where I think the PME of senior leadership, directional level leadership really comes in. This risk-taking capability, being a boxer who goes on his front foot but knows that he will still be stable if there is an opponent who knocks him up. I mean, that's the story we'll have to do. And that capacity has to be built up. And for that, you need longevity of tenures and direction so that I can mature into that space and see it growing. And I think that's where I think we would look at when I talked about HR policies and our PME. I think when you're talking about information to the last mile connectivity, I think the projects like FinSAS and all are talking about that. We are talking about an empowered soldier, the future infantry soldier as a system. I mean, I know I'm an advisor with one of the corporates where we put it up for the last Defense Expo of what that soldier will have. Yes, he will have the capacity to know where he is. So we have, and luckily the good part is technology capability within India is totally in-house. Yeah, our mindsets are not opening up to accept something which doesn't look as classy as what Israel or Europe provides us, but it does the job better. It's like Teams today when you're meeting your Zoom meetings or Discord. I mean, you're doing it as well, yeah, if not better. Today I go on to Teams if I want to do something a little more selectively, then I want to go on to Zoom and do it. Yeah. So I think there are things that are happening. So that's as far as that is concerned, sir. I'll be open to, in case I miss out something, if you could tell me later. And looking at deterrence, I think deterrence, strategic communication, strategic signaling, I think these are all issues that India has really not grappled with. When you talk about nuclear, I think the best thing that we've done is when this whole noise on TNW started, which everybody knows, it's an open domain. So I know we are connected to Facebook, so I want to be careful on what I say. But I would say that TNWs, it's there in the debate. We've said all along that nuclear resources of ours are a political tool. It is not for war making or battlefield articulation. So I think our stance of remaining in the political level and using it at that politico-strategic level as a deterrence tool makes sense. I think we need to be there. Otherwise, with an asymmetric partner like on the northern front and western front, we would really get bottled between the two and not able to address the fissures that exist within our country. So I think this balance will have to be done well. And I think we're doing it quite pragmatically. And we've actually put our foot down on that and not allowed it to go. I think how do we look at this asymmetric capability? I think, as you're aware, we did look at issues which happen for out-of-area contingencies. That's a thing which all militaries do. I mean, you always look at it, whether the mandate comes to you or not, but you always look at options that you might get sucked into. If not for anything else, for HADR cases, which is happening with the Navy, which happens with the Army, when you're looking at these, I would say, fragile border structures along the Himalayan kingdom. But I think when you're looking at this is where I think something which the director also alluded to in his points that he gave, is that you will have to look at coming up with this, where what I do in the long term might pinch from the Navy, but can it happen in a more nearer time frame? So if I'm doing something at the top, can I do something down below? Do I need to look at the development of the Andaman Nicobar? Do I look at what you're looking now at? The government has taken a decision to build up an alternate major setup for commercial traffic. Tomorrow, if the East China Sea and the South China Sea does get affected, but at whatever stage it happens, you have an alternate available here. How do you get to Singapore? How do people go to the rest of the world? So I think these kind of things are happening. I'm sure, as I said, we are now 6 years down the line here. I mean, we've carried impression, but I'm seeing the transition. It's been revolutionary. When you look at the higher defense management system of our country, it took America 70 years to refine what it has got. It's taken us 40 years to be that, starting off in 2016, 15, I would, or 13, 14, to what had happened in the last modulation in 2019. We've really got a structure. which is why it has shortfalls, but it's working. And it's a step in the right direction. I'm sure it'll get modulated and become equally more efficient. So I put it at that. And the last thing about was about collaborative and see, I'll give you an example. Today, I mean, the media was agog with about a few weeks back, where they said the US has asked us to see what will be India's critical role when anything happens in the South China Sea. So everybody thought we were going to pick up our bags and the thing and start hanging around there. No, that's not the way things happen in collaborative security. What is Five Eyes? Though it still is right dominated, if I can say that, but it at least gives you the eyes and ears at the right time and the right place. So a collaborative security of that, what you have done yourself in the marine domain awareness capability by setting this setup here in the outskirts of Delhi, you've got reps from at least how many, 11 or 12 countries? 11 countries. We've got our own people sitting something in Kuwait where you've got the Pakistanis and us sitting together. So MDO, Global Commons, Arctic, Space, you will have to have collaborative security if you want to go. You can't do it alone. And the pivot to Asia, theory of whole of America was hinged on, which Hillary Clinton initiated and Obama followed it up, was based on the premise of collaboratively getting the resources at different places and empowering people to be able to contribute to the overall good. And maybe that's what Quad is. It's not a military grouping, but it's looking at resilience today in the supply chain management. All these things are coming into play. So I think it's a great world to be in, and it's good to have had the experience of 40 years to be able to talk about it now. But I'm just saying that it is a requirement. How does that collaboration work? It doesn't have to every time be physical. And for this, before I end, I'll just give one quick example. This issue of strategic relationships and strategic partnerships. I did this on Russia because I spent 3 years. Strategic partnership used in the terms of the Russian and the old Soviet bloc was to give importance to a particular issue. I could have a strategic relationship with India, I can have a strategic relationship with Japan. But my thinking and mindset said a strategic means he is my buddy. He'll go wherever I'm going. So it didn't mean that. It's strategic relationship. So I think the implication and the meaning of a word has a different thing. And I think collaborative security doesn't mean that every time he goes to war, he'll go. Or today, if India goes to war, I'll have people sitting from the US sitting here at my headquarters. I don't need those guys. I think I know it better. If he had to go in for what he did in Desert Storm, he came and got briefed by India, the general. He wanted to know how the hell you do it right here. So I think the challenge remains. I don't think we have shortage of that problem. But yes, where you can get advantages is the Five Eyes gives you that eyes and ears, your satellite communication linkages, ISR. Look at what Starlink did today, do in private space for the Ukraine. So that's the area where I think this kind of commonality should come. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes. Let's just a minute. Yes, let's give an sort of a reference to a naval officer there. Then will come you and then you. Okay. Yeah. Please start with the Navy officer. Please identify yourself.
Good morning, sir. I am Commander Avava in Naval Headquarters and looking after officer induction in the Navy. Sir, as we speak about the Joint Military Command or a theater command, now India unfortunately is surrounded by neighbors who are not stable. We can take example of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and China, and so on. So the joint military operations, sir, like military army has its own requirements. They want to go big time because of the theater, because of the challenges they face in the harsh weather in the north. Navy want to establish its domain in the ocean as well extend its reach way beyond. I'm sure Air Force also has its own plan of expansion. So how will the government be convinced to spend more budget or allocate more resources and to which force with the limited money which is available with the government?
Yes, please identify.
My name is Colonel Mahesh. I'm ex-Signals and I've been in the corporate for 17 years. Just a very short question, sir. In the defense sector was open to, the defense procurement was open to private sector in 2002, the DPP 2002, and the professed aim was that we are going to reverse this, the import to export ratio, which was 70:30, we're going to reverse it. we had about 10 or maybe 11 versions of the DPP, and they changed now to DEC, acquisition procedure. As far as the imports are concerned, we still continue, as per the latest sector, we still continue to be the biggest importer. My simple question is, are the figures listed in the DPP consistent with the modernization efforts?
Yes, please.
Sir, I will,
Identify yourself.
sir, my name is Colonel Mukherjee. I am with the USA in the coastal section. Sir, I have a comment and request for six. Sir, three terms: evolution, modernization, and transformation. Evolution, sir, we used to walk on 4. Today we walk on 2, and possibly revolution will fly. Transformation is total change in thinking. There is a parliament today, they will triangle, which is reality. Thinkings have changed. Today the now courts have changed. So that is a transformation. Change in thinking, entire of focus. Our work on beliefs, not versions. That's not a transformation. Or not different way. Whereas modernization, I think, is a continuous process. And it has to be time specific. 5 years, but we take a period of 10 years. What is the threat? What we have to do in this 10 years? And that must be achieved. And before that 10th year finishes, somewhere around the 8th year, we must be thinking of another 10 years ahead. Same on these analogies, sir. What is the threat spectrum? Likely development of threats, matching HR, matching technology, and matching equipment profile. This is my view, sir, and your comments on this.
One more question. Dr. Roshan, you'll ask your question towards the end. Okay, ladies, sorry, I'm violating some basic principles.
Gender balance.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
please go ahead.
Thank you, General Chairman. Thank you, General Sani, for an excellent presentation. My question is, China has enough first use, but the force structure it's developing is quite different. It is developing low-yield nuclear weapons, especially on its IRBMs and its submarine cruise launch vehicles. And this is going to change the policy if they want any time in future. Pakistan also is developing submarine launch cruise missiles, and sooner or later it is going to come into Pacific. You still feel that we should continue with the process of deterrence what we have as of now, not using nuclear per se in the weaponization program? Thank you.
Great questions like that. Commander Arora, I think, how do you harmonize the resources and what to allocate? There is the ICADs, which is in the army, and you also got the IDS, which is sorry, like the the capability development plan that you worked out. You've got the ITIPP, the integrated developmental plans that have been. Actually, I can speak very loudly other than this, but I think the mic is creating a little bit of a resonance. I think I'm not speaking in the right manner. But systems, to give you an example, when I was an ADGMO-B, the fight on the 5-year capability development plan, which had to be fed in, became a little ugly. Because everybody said my requirement is predominantly the right direction to go. I saw the evolution by the time I retired, and to now what I hear from people outside. I think the capability development plan is harmonized beautifully at the IDS level. And it is then in place for looking at the modernization, meeting the objectives of the next, the immediate concerns and in the long-term perspective. How do you make the difference between the two? As all people in the Navy always say, the maritime domain is the most important domain. Maybe it provides linkages. World powers have looked at Navy, and that's why China is developing its Navy, though it also has the Mackindor's theory of heartland, which links into Eurasia. But for India, a country like us, I think what makes greater sense today for you is your territorial borders today require security. It's like sitting on your doorstep and somebody can walk in at any time. So correctly, I feel presently, the importance being allocated for ensuring and empowering the land forces to be able to meet the challenges on the borders remains very much a domain of the land forces. So maybe its primacy remains in the immediate foreseeable future. As we see, like you so many demands today for development of the Navy. Today, the capacity for the Navy and thinking is already in the order of when 30 or 40 ships have been placed in order. When will they start manifesting? A decade from now, or maybe closer to a decade. So when you have the wherewithal to be able to do what you do, is the answer, then maybe maritime would be given greater importance as the requirements go up. As we are seeing ourselves, it is perceived that within the next decade or so, or within half a decade, you might see a battle group of the Chinese floating around in the Indian Ocean. So if it's going to be there, it will go. So I think the challenge remains, and hopefully the growth vector of India's economy, in my view, that as it's growing from say to 5 trillion in the next 3-4 years and gets to about 10 trillion, then I think maybe this asymmetry that exists today in our relationship with China may become more amenable to talks and resolution of matters. Give you an example, the Chinese have a mindset of a power hierarchy. When he talks to you, he talks from a position of strength. A rationalization and an accord being met is fundamentally hinged on the fact that you accept and he doesn't give anything. You give. Tomorrow, when you close that asymmetry, maybe the give and take, which was the situation in 2002, when we resolved the central sector and identified our pain points, we haven't taken a resolution, but we actually firmed it in. He did, to an extent, accept what is there as the dividing line in the Arunachal area, though he keeps using it as a batting stick, but that's an influence of. It's like his land and sovereignty agreement, which he put out in 2021. The new maps, the cartographic legal activism that he has shown by putting in. So I think the ideas and maturity at the senior apex level, irrespective of the chess beating we do at the levels of all of us at the junior levels in the army, there is rational thought given to the fact of how we should be looking at the priority and allocation of resources. And I think so the balance is being well maintained. I don't think we should get too worried, but yes, I can also see it, and I can, maybe it's something which might happen when I'm tottering into my grave, is we might see the predominance of Navy being the most critical area because of the maritime domain. By then we would have resolved these problems here, and the asymmetry with Pakistan would actually not make a difference to us. But as I see in the foreseeable future, I don't see that happening. And this allocation is maturely done. The Air Force has a role and task. If it's the same story with us, that if I could throw just 0.5 ton and now I can throw 10 tons with the same, I still require 42, I require 32. I mean, that's an argument. But the point is they require resources to be able to meet the challenge. Their functional capability needs to be protected in any joint structure to be able to function. So I'll leave it at that. So there is rationality and sense, but the transition will happen as the world and the evolution of the global stage keeps changing. Coming on to the second issue, which is looking at Mahesh, yeah, the DAP, I think undoubtedly all developing countries, because of the worry of corruption, have always been stuck onto processes and procedures. These DAP, whether it was 2002 or it comes up to 2020, the problem remains the same. I mean, it's a process. A process takes time. Process is individuals. There are convoluted interests, maybe at times, may or may not be there, but we have this process is the thing that is being done. Whereas I think there is one of the things which in capacity, I mean, there was so much to share on it, but I would say today they started and evolved to an L1, T1. Today, I think, why should you look at a L1 kind of a thing? Yeah? You should look at the capabilities. I, as a user, which is happening in Australia, I'm just saying, I demand this is the operational capability I desire from a system. It does A, B, C, D, E. I should also be pragmatic. And that should come up from people. 10 people will come up. He said, I'll give you this. It could be looking like in this way. The other could be looking this way. But as meeting the aspiration, you then take a choice. And then you negotiate the price. But starting off from the fact that you start at the lowest price, naturally you won't give. And again, I'll tell you a story which I must tell you. When I was deployed along the borders, I was a young major. I used to get milk which used to come to me at the border, where sitting next to Arispura, where all the doodh was made for Jammu. It used to go to Jammu, it would come to me by the afternoon. Half the time it had gone curdled. That was a different story because of the heat. But the issue is, by the time I got it, I needed to actually put tea leaves in that to really make tea and not add in water and then put milk. So I asked this chap, he used to cross the border because we were deployed along that. I said, you carry such beautiful milk from here. We get it in our house while we are deployed. But why the hell do I get this stuff? He says, sir, the problem is how much do you pay for the milk? I said, I pay $7 or $8 a day. He says, sir, the contract rate is $2, sir. So he says, I take out the fat, I add water, and he bought me and showed me all this. So the challenge of L1, if we don't transgress from this issue of L1, the agency powers were great. But then what did the bureaucracy say? That the armed forces have not been able to benchmark it correctly. So we've spent more money. Actually, we have got the same thing for a lesser money. They've done the third one, but it's strongly the same. So the issue is processes and procedures will have to be transgressed, get it into an operational requirement and not necessity, and you'll find the transition happening correctly. So coming on to Mukherjee's point, evolution, modernization, and transformation. I think, let me put it like this: modernization is to meet the simplistically to put a 30% advanced weapon system, 30% current, and 40%, which is moving towards obsolescence. So I think that's the way all armies are structured. We've got this balance walked as of now. So modernization becomes part of this transformation study. So talking about capability development, it's actually a process of modernization today. When I'm looking, and by the way, technologies that are coming. When I'm looking at transformation, I'm talking about these joint structures, the DMA, the CDS. So what you're seeing in India, whether you use modernization or use transformation, it's a combination of both these issues that are happening simultaneously. And that's the way the nation will have to grow. We become more segmented silos much later. That can happen in the US. He can have a futures command for what he's doing. We do not have that luxury. We tried it for the nuclear brigade that we started. But I'm saying this is the transition that's happening. So I think we shouldn't get too worried about it. Modernization and transformation are co-jointed. And maybe in my talk also, I covered aspects of transformation which came out, which were also under the heading of modernization. And coming on to this long tactical weapons and say, I mean, there are two schools of thought. One very strong writings on the nuclear domain and law or use policy, the ambiguity, where we've got asymmetry view. Yes, certain amount of ambiguity could be created. There are ways to do it, which not the issue of debate, but I would say we shouldn't fall prey to the issue of moving into this realm of tactical and battlefield nuclear weapons. I mean, whatever be the year, but in the battlefield, because the minute you transgress that, then there is no end in sight. It's a circle which you cannot close. And so it's like the escalatory dynamics of a nuclear holocaust. I think the same story is what ends where. This whole story, because I mean, the whole story was linked to the fact that because the Americans were far behind the Russians, and that's all thanks to the German scientists which they had picked up and they had picked up. So they decided and came up with the tactical nuclear weapons as a concept. But you see how the MTCR was, yeah. It made sure neither could Russia, Soviet Union, nor could USA hit the battleground, which today is Ukraine for them was Germany and the European subcontinent. Kill yourself, fire everything, but it was within the realm of the European subcontinent. It's not for the rest of the world. So like this, I don't think we should fall prey to it, but yes, certain amount of ambiguity. And I think as we evolve, there would be a need for us to have a relook. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Bharat, I had a question.
Bharat Karnad. General, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you talk modernization, I'd certainly like to know, but there has to be an agenda. What are your priorities? Considering everything, given the situation of resource scarcity, especially financial and so on, what are your 5 priorities? That order. Because then we get an idea of what it is that you mean to, concentrate your attention on.
I totally agree.
Okay. Admiral Kapoor? Chopra, sorry.
Mine is a very advanced question. Mine is a very simple one. This is, there's a report which has come out. The Chinese lost 4 soldiers in Galwan. One was an officer, one was a little elderly soldier, about 40 years old, and the 3 were younger. Now, this has, with the one-child policy, etc., which they had, created a lot of chaos in China, and the government had to, the CCP had to do a lot of, putting the issue under the carpet and then reducing it quietly. What I'm trying to say is this is a very big Achilles heel of the PLA in the sense that I don't think they'll be able to take very many casualties because of this one-child policy. And there was a big next thing they want to add to that. And the other day I was in the RR and there was a Nepal Army JCO giving me a look over. He was quite a chatty chap. He was talking and all. So he was saying, sir, people are now taking Gurkhas. The Australian Army has taken his son, for example, into the Australian Army. He himself is going to retire and perhaps also go to Australia. And of course, we know that the Chinese have infiltrated Nepal. Is there a Wagner group, a Chinese Wagner group of the Gurkhas which may come up? So you may end up then with Gurkha fighting Gurkha. According to the JCO, that's why it's very possible because there's so much of poverty in Nepal. And then the Chinese are completely with the Communist Party there, because comes and goes. They've infiltrated the whole system. Views on that, sir.
Any last question? There are so many questions. Just a minute. So, okay. Yes. Let's have all. This is the last set of questions, and then I request you to give your.
Jai sir, I'm Major Malik from 18 Grenadiers, sir. I'm a company commander in my battalion, sir. So my question is actually very much with the functional requirements, which are the necessity on the ground, sir. There are five things: the manpower, the equipment, the functional capability, and the on-ground leadership, sir. The first thing, manpower, sir. Composition of the same. 1971, 1999, and 20 weeks. Just no change as far as productivity is concerned, as far as being manpower are concerned, as far as manpower is concerned, sir. And nothing else, sir. Second, sir,
Can I request you one thing?
Okay, sir.
Sorry, Murli, we'll take this question because we're linked on
Sir, the first question was with respect to the manpower, sir.
We're linked on Facebook. So what you're saying is something that we can talk when we cut ourselves from there. You all right? Because
Okay, sir.
stating something which I think should remain in the domain.
So actually, I wanted to, sir.
But talk about this which you said after we pen off from here, because those four things, once we switch off the Facebook, we will talk about.
Right, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. This is just for the sake of obtaining the right propriety for open media.
Get your power. We will. We'll switch off the Facebook and maybe we'll give him an opportunity.
Yeah. Once we do that, switch off, we can
just hold on and we'll handle. We don't want to dissuade you from.
No, we'll answer your question. I mean, it'd be great to hear what you're saying. It's great for us also to hear that. Let's leave it from the social.